Gospel of John, and we hear the story of Nicodemus, who comes searching, trying to find out some truths and understand what is going on in the world, and does Jesus really come as the one who he says he is, and how can Nicodemus believe such truth? In our gospel lesson today, we will read together the gospel, and could I invite somebody to read the reader part? There's a couple parts there. All right, awesome. And then there's congregational parts and pastor part as well. But through this text, we get a powerful image of new birth and the biblical story of the serpent in the wilderness. Jesus shows Nicodemus and us just what it is to accept the power and freedom God gives us to resist evil, injustice, and oppression in whatever forms they present themselves. Now there was a person named Nicodemus, sent from the Pharisees, who were the religious leaders among the Jewish people. He came toward Jesus at night and said to him,
Rabbi, we know you are a teacher who has come from God, because no one can do these signs that you are doing unless God were with him.
Jesus answered and said to him,
Jesus, truly, truly, I tell you, unless you are born anew, you cannot see the kingdom of God.
How can a person be born once old? We can't enter into the mother's womb a second time and be born.
I tell you for certain that before you can get into God's kingdom, you must be born not only by water, but by the Spirit. Humans give life to their children, yet only God's Spirit can change you into a child of God. Don't be surprised when I say that you must be born from above. Only God's Spirit gives new life. The Spirit is like the wind that blows wherever it wants to. You can hear the wind, but you don't know where it comes from or where it is going.
How can this be?
How can you be a teacher of Israel and not know these things? I tell you for certain that we know what we are talking about because we have seen it ourselves. But none of you will accept what we say. If you don't believe when I talk to you about things on earth, how can you possibly believe if I talk to you about things in heaven? No one has gone up to heaven except the Son of Man, who came down from there. And the Son of Man must be lifted up, just as that metal snake was lifted up by Moses in the desert. Then everyone who has faith in the Son of Man will have eternal life.
This is how much God loved the world. God gave God's only begotten Son, so that everyone believing in him should not be destroyed, but should have eternal life.
For God did not send the Son into the world to condemn the world, but so that the world might be saved through him. This is the gospel of our Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
Does anybody know the reference there where it says, just as the metal snake was lifted up by Moses in the desert? It comes from a couple different places. Scripturally, it comes from when Moses and the Israelites were in the desert and they were complaining. They couldn't find water. They were whining and complaining all over the place. And then there were snakes that were coming out of the ground and were poisoning people, were killing people. And Moses complained again to God, and God said, okay, here's what you do. You go and you put a snake up on your staff, on a pole, and it became metal, and God wanted the people to look into the snake's eyes, and they would be healed. Now, that seems a little ludicrous, but it was really a test of faith for the Israelites, right? And also, it's where we get if, let's see, my medical bracelet is worn off, but did you ever notice medical symbols? It's a snake, right? And it's on the staff, and that's where that reference comes from. So again, we have a test and a question of faith in our second, in the gospel text today with Nicodemus. Nicodemus, I love this story of Nicodemus. He always seems to be searching for something. In the Gospel of John, he comes several times to Jesus. He comes first in this story we have today. He comes at another point trying to hold off the Pharisees from arresting Jesus. And then he comes a third time, where we can sense that he has fully embraced who Jesus is and was, because he is the one who gives space and brings ointments to anoint Jesus' body for burial. But today's story, Nicodemus comes, he comes in the middle of the night. And that's kind of significant because he wants to preserve for himself a little bit of, his face. He doesn't want people fully to know how curious he is about who Jesus is. He's a Pharisee, after all. He's one of the important religious and ruling class, and he needs to kind of keep for himself that little bit of dignity, just in case things go south with this man Jesus, and the things don't turn out as true as they seem like they are. That could he be the one? Could he be the Messiah? So you might say Nicodemus is hedging his bets a little. Now, I don't know anybody like that, do you? Any of us who walk around in the world thinking, well, I'm going to try to protect myself a little bit. I'm going to not let all of my cards out on the table just in case. Or I'm waiting for that other shoe to drop. When is the bad news really going to hit it? And when am I going to find out that all that I thought was real and true is not? This is kind of who Nicodemus was. And he was such a guy that, though, that he was curious about this man Jesus. And so he went to listen for himself, kind of half disbelieving, half aching, really, to find out if what he heard was true. And so he asks Jesus to give, through the power of Jesus' wisdom, what Nicodemus might do to survive the mess of the world in which he found himself in his own day. Not like any of us have a mess in our world today, but God stood, Nicodemus stood in front of Jesus asking what he might do. And so Jesus shows Nicodemus and us, as we said at the beginning, what it takes for us and for Nicodemus to accept freedom and power that God gives us to resist evil and injustice and oppression in whatever form they present themselves. Jesus basically tells Nicodemus that he has to stop believing in the system, putting his roots in the system that he thought all his life was going to sustain him. And instead he had to reroot himself, plug himself into something entirely separate from all he grew up knowing and understanding. And this new thing is to root himself in is God. And then he has to be born again from above. Now, we've all maybe heard that before, but what does that really mean? And what does it mean, most importantly, for us? And that's what I hope to share a little bit with you today. And what Nicodemus was hearing from Jesus is that all that had gone before, all the traditions that he had learned from his forefathers, the ways of the law, the path that was set before him, all of his governmental rules and regulations, all the things that the administration of his time had brought into reign and the powers that be, Jesus was urging Nicodemus to not place his trust in all of those boundaries that he thought he understood. In order to be a child of God, Jesus tells Nicodemus and us that we need to first let go. Let go of all those things. And astonished, Nicodemus stands there and he yells out his but. But how is that possible? But who can I trust? But what about everything I've built my life around over these years? But how can it be? What buts might you put in that long list? Jesus says to him, the wind blows where it will, and you do not know where it comes from. And Nicodemus, who was a guy who traced his lines and followed each step of the path precisely is terrified of the wind that blows where it will. Because the wind whose origin is the unknowable one. And there's something frightening in placing our whole entire lives into the unknown's hand. But God has promised us that he loves us. And we know that from today's gospel text, that famous and beloved text, "For God so loved the world." But this is one of those times when I almost wish the lectionary writers would give us a little bit more permission and go a little bit further than they sometimes do. They left off, I think, an important part that I want to share with you. After the "God so loved the world" part, it reads, it goes on to say, "Those who believe in him are not condemned, but those who do not believe are condemned already, because they have not believed in the name of the only Son of God. And this is the judgment, that the light has come into the world, but people loved darkness rather than light, because their deeds are evil. For all who do evil hate the light and do not come into the light, so that their deeds may not be exposed. But those who do what is true come into the light, so that it may be clearly seen in the deeds they have done in God." And I think this story stands for us as part of our baptismal promise in our walk through the course of Lent. One of the promises that we make in our baptism is to resist evil and the devil and all his empty promises. And corresponding with that is the evil and the oppression of the world and all of the injustices that happen, not just in our individual lives, but in our corporate and communal life. Everywhere we turn, we can really find a place in our current community and world where there is injustice. And I think Nicodemus learns from Jesus just how and when and perhaps why to stand up against that. But one of the things that is difficult sometimes about being a preacher is to stand in the community and hold up that which is our sin. And I'm not going to do that in terms of individual sins, but our corporate sin. For we too are guilty of injustice and evil, and it comes in the way of our being complicit with the things that go on around us. Not speaking to necessarily anything specific, I will let you think of your own things, or if you want to talk with me afterward, more specifically. But we all known and have seen things that are not right, are not what God asks us to be and do. And I think that's what it really comes down to in our text today, is that God is sharing through Jesus with Nicodemus that it is not just about what we say with our lips, the promises that we make in our baptism, but it is everything we do after. It is how do we live in the light? How do we let our light so shine before others that they know God? And very often, I know I, as a representative of the church, not just as a pastor, but as someone who is a supposed follower of Jesus, that I fail. I am as complicit as anyone else. I say we should be great stewards of the world around us, yet I drive a car and I use hairspray and I don't always recycle. I travel and I meet people and I don't really get to know them. I shut myself off from getting to know who people really are, and they become the them. We all do these kinds of things. And I think this is what, from Jesus to Nicodemus, that we should learn, is that we are to be born again. To be born again means to be able to follow Jesus in a way that is not just in what we say, but in what we do. It's in every being of it's in the very being of who we are. That we are to be born through our baptisms in the model of Christ Jesus. Now, saying that, we have Lent. We have an opportunity weekly to gather at the foot of the cross and remind ourselves that we do fail, and that we do not hold ourselves up to the standard that Jesus walked with, and that without him we can't do it. And so we turn again weekly, and hopefully maybe even daily, to remind ourselves that we are claimed by God, marked with the cross of Christ forever, and can pick ourselves up and can start anew, can walk in his holy way for that moment, that hour, that day, and be within the realm of God, knowing that we are beloved and saved and living out according to the promises of our baptism and the promises that God makes with us, that we are his, we are claimed for always. We may give our verbal assent in baptism, saying that yes, we follow Jesus, but our test comes. Our test comes each day to see how we live that out. And I invite you this week to consider what tests you face and what God is asking you to accept this week in our Lenten journey, that the gifts and the freedoms and the powers that God has already given you to resist evil and injustice and oppression in any way or shape or form they come in, to turn again toward God, walking in the footsteps of Jesus, where you can be claimed by his love and by his grace, now and always. Amen.